Okay, thank you for joining in on Skype and Teams Intelligent Communications by Dino Caputo and Habib Mankal.
So today we're going to cover an overview of Skype for Business and Teams. We're going to talk a little bit about the technical differences and similarities, and then finish it off with what this all means to me in terms of future direction. My name is Dino Caputo. I'm a partner with Enable UC, and I've been a Microsoft Skype for Business MVP since 2015. And you can hit me on Twitter at Dino Caputo, or check out my blog and post comments there.
And my name is Habib Mankal. I'm a UC architect and founder at WaveCore IT. I'm also a Microsoft Skype MVP, but since 2016, and below is my Twitter handle and my blog. Okay, so jumping right in, we're going to give a quick overview of Skype for Business on-prem and Skype for Business online, the two different Skype for Business versions that you can use. So what is Skype for Business? It's a complete enterprise-grade unified communications solution that allows you to have two-user or multi-user communications. So peer-to-peer calls or IM, desktop sharing, etc. Or you can host those in a conference to have 3 or more users utilize those features. So from a basis perspective, it provides instant messaging and presence and desktop sharing, as I mentioned, voice, video, web conferencing as well. There's a list of other features as well. It's fully encrypted end-to-end from the client server perspective. And it can be used on multiple clients such as desktop operating systems, Windows and Mac, web browsers, and it's also available in 37 languages. So you can see it's a pretty simple, straightforward application. You're able to instantly find a person in your contact list, just like the screenshot shows there. Right-click on them, send them an instant message, call, place a video call, schedule meetings, so on and so forth. So it integrates with Active Directory and Exchange. It's reliant on Active Directory and DNS as well. It can also be used as a PBX or phone system replacement for large organizations. So from small 15-user companies that I've worked with up to 40,000 user companies that I've worked with as well. And I know Dino's worked with some large customers as well. So given that it's a fast-paced life that we work in, we need something that always up and running to be able to communicate with each other. So the Skype for Business on-prem server can be deployed in a highly available deployment, as well as a site a failover perspective. So you can, if something happens to our office here, we can fail over to another office. And Dino will talk about that a little bit in the next slide.
So in terms of a Skype for Business high-level architecture, in the middle of the diagram here, Central Site A might represent what a typical mid-range enterprise customer would deploy with respect to server roles to get all the Skype for Business functionality. As you can see, there are roles both within the corporate network and within a DMZ, as shown by the edge and reverse proxy roles. So quite a bit of infrastructure required here to do all the different roles, as you can see. A Skype for Business deployment can also scale across multiple sites. In this example, our central site is paired with another central site consisting of the same server roles for disaster recovery capabilities. So the set of servers you see in the middle would be replicated at central site B in the bottom right, and each of those sites would pair off each other to provide disaster recovery capabilities for all the Skype for Business modalities in the event one of those sites went down. You also have the option to deploy appliances and gateways to serve the needs of smaller branch sites. So you can see a survivable branch appliance is literally just an appliance you buy from a third-party vendor, and it would allow you to meet the needs of a smaller site. You could also choose to deploy a gateway just to do the audio capabilities of that site, the PSTN capabilities, and the users would still sign in to the central site, either in A or B. So you have a lot of different variety of options, and obviously, the decision to go down this path requires quite a bit of planning, which you would do when you chose your selected vendor and you went through an exercise of planning and getting a solid design set up. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other deployment options in just a bit.
So continuing on with the Skype for Business overview. So Microsoft has a feature called Federation. What it does is it provides the ability to use the same features that we use internally between two or more users, such as, like I talked about before, IM presence, desktop sharing, etc., but to be able to communicate with people outside of my company or my organization. So I have the ability to communicate with partners or clients and have a deeper, a tighter relationship with them. So speaking about partners, Microsoft has a robust ecosystem of software partners and vendors, right? And what do? They provide extensions to the software platform, whether it be software or hardware. So from a software perspective, if there's features that you're looking for that are not really included in the base Skype for Business deployment, then you can reach out to these third-party vendors that have that capabilities to provide you, such as, if you need a true contact center application, you would contact some of these companies that build a software application as well, or take the monitoring role, which provides static data analytics, so you can run a report on what's happening within your environment. And they sort of take it to the next level that gives you end-to-end real-time reporting and analytics to be able to understand what's happening within your environment, whether you have a healthy environment or if there's bottlenecks or issues within there. And additionally, there's other vendors that make management software for managing enterprise voice deployments, etc. And then from a hardware perspective, there's many vendors out there that build headsets and speaker phones and handsets, whether wired or wireless. And then, that's from an end user perspective. And then, from a meeting room perspective, from a small huddle room to large conference rooms using, Skype room systems or Surface hubs for a collaboration perspective. So all these are done by utilizing the APIs and SDKs that Microsoft provides these vendors.
So with respect to Skype deployment options, there are really three paths an organization can take, which depends on many factors. And I can't stress enough that customers should partner with certified vendors to be able to help them make this decision. So it's important that you get on the right path. I talked about the on-premises option earlier in detail. Then we also have two others I'm going to talk about here. We have a hybrid option where the users are hosted online in Office 365. However, their PSTN calling capabilities are delivered on-premise, and that can either be done by a small Skype for Business server footprint or using an appliance like a Cloud Connector Edition, which is built exclusively for customers that don't have any Skype for Business infrastructure or never have deployed it. For those that have in the past used Skype for Business or Link Server, for example, they can scale down their infrastructure on premise just to do the PSTN telephony part of it, and that's how they would formulate their hybrid approach. And lastly, there's an option of going completely in the cloud or online. So that's 100% of the feature functionality is delivered by Office 365 Skype for Business Online. So for organizations in the US, Puerto Rico, the UK, Ireland, Netherlands, and Spain, as well as Belgium and Germany, you have the full Microsoft phone system capability where you can assign users phone numbers and they can make and receive calls to and from the PSTN. In Canada, we don't yet have this capability. So for now, organizations need to choose either the on-prem or hybrid solution for their telephony needs.
All right, so here we go. New kid on the block, which is Teams. So what is it? So Microsoft has deemed Teams to be an intelligent communications platform or solution, which by definition, intelligent communications go beyond traditional unified communications, enabling you to complete tasks more efficiently and with minimal context switching, participate in more productive meetings that cover the entire meeting lifecycle, and better manage your everyday communications overload. So it's a persistent chat-based workspace that was introduced a little over a year ago, so last November. And Microsoft has taken the basic principles of Skype for Business persistent chat that was on-prem and put it in the cloud and built it from the ground up. So the infrastructure is all new, but it's based on the persistent chat platform. So at the beginning there was competitor called Slack that really took this to market. I would say first from a cloud perspective, but Microsoft has taken it beyond just being a persistent chat platform because it integrates with all of the Microsoft stack in the cloud. So as I mentioned, it's a cloud-based offering. There's no real talk about bringing it to be an on-premise service. However, there is some discussion on the roadmap to potentially bringing it into a hybrid deployment to be able to communicate with an on-prem solution and have some of the workloads be offloaded into the cloud. And just to reiterate that the Teams application is strictly a client application, whether it be desktop or mobile application or web-based. But Dino is going to talk a bit more about Teams in general in the next slide.
So Teams is built on existing Microsoft technologies, really woven together by Office 365 groups, or modern groups, as you may have heard them called. So out of the box, when you first set up a team, Microsoft Teams will create an Office 365 modern group. It's going to build out a SharePoint Teams online site, complete with a document library. And it's going to go into Exchange Online and build out a group mailbox, which will be used by Teams to store meeting invites and information regarding Teams meetings. So the four key attributes of Teams would be that it's based on persistent conversation threads. So this is really the huge difference between it and Skype, whereas in Skype for Business you have non-threaded conversations, so that you're conversing with one or more people. The second you close that window, that conversation's kind of gone. I mean, it's stored in conversation history, but if you open up a new window with those people, that you don't see the old conversation appear. Whereas Teams is built on persistent chat foundation, where the conversation will remain there. So somebody joining a conversation later could see the history of that conversation, whereas in Skype for Business, as you add people into a conversation, they don't see what was previously said. So that's really a fundamental difference there. It's considered a hub for teamwork. So again, a product that's really built for making efficient communications possible. And it's customizable for each team. So what one team decides to do within a company and how they want to use Teams may be completely different from how another team chooses to leverage it. And lastly, it's built on security and compliance. So all the security and compliance features that are available today in Office 365 can be leveraged within Teams, and that's super powerful because security and compliance is obviously an important thing in today's modern organizations. So the fact that we can leverage what they've already implemented in Office 365 is important. A team can be created using existing Office 365 groups as well. So if you've spent time, you're an organization that has spent time building out groups, different group membership, SharePoint online content, all of that can be kind of ported over into Teams. So you don't have to worry about redoing everything because of Teams. Teams will actually let you ingest content that you've already built out in these technologies.
Okay, so here's the high-level architecture of Teams. As you can see, it's definitely a lot different than the Skype for Business architecture, where you needed a Skype for Business server to do all the integrations from the client, to all the different integration points, such as Exchange or SharePoint, etc. So I'm not going to dig too deep into it. I just want to just go over it quickly. So you can see that Teams is just a client. So we have a web, a desktop, or any of the mobile application. And there's three key parts to this. So the client application connects to the team services. From a backend infrastructure perspective. So it connects to all the different Office 365 policies, configurations. That's the Teams sort of side of things, email services, etc., etc. And then, it utilizes the Skype for Business Online or the Skype for Business Online services that have been built from the ground up, but sort of ported over from the Skype Online side. So they're ported over and they built the new Skype services that provide the conferencing service, the chat and the presence, the telephony, the PSTN conferencing, etc. So it utilizes that and it talks directly to those particular services as well. And then lastly, it uses the true backend infrastructure of the Microsoft Cloud, which is Azure and Office 365. So it uses Azure for identity authentication, telemetry, and data analytics. And then it also uses the Office 365, basic fundamental, right? Which is, Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Office web apps, so on, right? So it allows all these different infrastructures to be brought in directly into the client so that you have a more unique experience. And we'll show that in some of the slides going ahead.
So no, this isn't a snakes and ladders game, but really just a walkthrough of how a Teams conversation would look like in terms of it leveraging all the back-end pieces and the hooks that Habib just talked about. So starts with you. You're the blue person. It's part of that modern group that is created when you first build out a team. And each team has a SharePoint site. And each team also has a set of channels that can be created within a team. So there's a general channel, and each individual team can create as many channels as they want. And all of those will have their own mapping into SharePoint. Each channel also has tabs, where tabs can just be another piece of organization where you can embed things like Excel, Word, Power BI right in the channel. Super powerful feature, which we'll show you in a second. And you can also go into the channel and start meetings right from there. So an ad hoc meeting or a scheduled meeting will appear right in the channel. Each channel also has a built-in reply mechanism to deal with chains and threads. And each chain contains its own messages and images repository as well. Lastly, Teams will leverage OneDrive. So if a user wants to share private files that they have stored in their OneDrive, that's all controlled or available by Teams and controlled by OneDrive. So all of the security you may have applied to a file or set of files will be honored within Teams.
Okay, so what does it mean to me? Well, at the beginning, first thing we need to know is, what kind of licenses do we require? So from a license perspective, so it's available, Teams is available with every commercial Office 365 tenant. So Business Essentials, Premium, and all of the enterprise licenses, E1, E3, E5. So as I mentioned before in the architecture slide, the Skype for Business Online features will become available in Teams over time. So there's a lot of features that are in there today that have been ported over, such as the instant messaging and presence, the peer-to-peer calling, conferences, meetings, contact, conversation history. The voice calling is actually a couple of weeks ago has been pushed out, so it's available for all of the countries that have the PSTN calling capabilities through Office 365, right? So all of the communication features roadmap is located on the MS Tech community online, and it was published, I think, was roughly about a month or so ago on there as well. So there's definitely a lot of more conferencing features and a lot more features in general to come, and we'll show some of the features in the client in some of the next slides.
Again, what does this mean to me? Skype for Business will be offered as a standalone offering for the foreseeable future. So, just before Ignite, the big bombshell news was that Teams is going to replace Skype for Business. While nothing has been set in stone in the way of dates, it does appear the future of this intelligent communications is with Teams. So that means that Microsoft is putting most of their development effort into Teams, and over time, expect to see more details released about how this transition will take place. Until then, it's status quo, so enterprise customers shouldn't worry about their investment in Skype for Business, as Microsoft is committed to at least one more release of the server product. But for sure there'll be one more release, and I would not be surprised to see another release after that. But for now, the net new investments are primarily focused in the Teams space, so a lot of the new features you're going to see coming out will be squarely within Teams.
Okay, so the Teams client. So some of you may already be working with it. Some of you, this may be the first time that you're actually seeing what the client looks like. So I wanted to give a quick overview about it itself. So you can see along the left-hand menu, it gives you the different areas that I have. So I have my Teams section that I can chat in. I have my peer-to-peer chat, as Dino mentioned before, the meetings that I have upcoming, and the files that I have available in my OneDrive, or the files that have been shared with me. So if we're strictly looking at the Teams section, we have a team called Northwind Traders, and below that we have things that are called channels. And a channel is just a topic that you're going to be utilizing for your particular team, right? So we have marketing, social media, website. Every team that is created comes with a general channel. Inside each channel, you have different threads that are happening. So you can see here, Daphne is looking, for the latest 2017 strategy presentation, and we can reply in that particular thread. And so all of this is persistent. So I can always come in, join, for the day, and come back in, and I can see sort of what transpired. Below that, you can see there's a marketing review. So that's actually a phone call, and you can see the list of users that are actually on that call or meeting. So with the intelligent communication, it actually prepares the content for you that you want to talk about for that. It'll take notes of everything that happened within that particular meeting or conference. So it'll take all the OneNote or the whiteboard, all the chat communication, everything that was shared, and it will put it into a file and share that video within the channel itself, so that I can come back and view that over again. So there's definitely a lot of that. That's what that intelligent communication brings you. Is it unifies everything into a central location and brings all that AI technology into the Teams client itself.
And really quickly here, this is an example of a customer embedding an application right into Teams. So here you can see the Zendesk ticketing app has been set up as a tab, and the person using this client just doesn't even have to leave Teams. They can do all their ticketing right within the Teams client. A great example of how you can embed apps directly into Teams.
And quickly here as well, so as I mentioned, a Teams meeting or a call. So right here, we're looking at a video call within Teams, which essentially looks like the way that Skype for Business on Mac looks like today. So it gives you the tile view, from a video perspective, which is definitely a bit different, like I said, than the Skype for Business one. So I wanted to quickly just touch on sort of the differences between the video views.
Again, tying this back into what this all means to me. So once again, it will be status quo for existing on-prem enterprise customers. Nothing's going to change in the near future for the workloads they've deployed. So your conference bridging, your current phone numbers, none of that's going to change. So no need to worry there. For Skype for Business Online customers, you can expect investments made for things like phones and room-based video devices to continue to be supported as the transition to Teams occurs. So you're going to see a lot more announcements around device support and room-based devices that are going to be accessible to Teams. And Skype and Teams can also be run side by side today. So this allows organizations to test the waters to become comfortable with the new product. So there's no issues with running both clients together. I've got both the Skype client and the Teams client running side by side today, and I'm able to do my work just like that. So expect that there will be transition where IT admins and users have the ability to comfortably move from the Skype client to the Teams client in a way that suits their working style. So I'll chat a bit about that in terms of policies that admins will be able to apply to be able to warn users that there's going to be an impending change. So a couple different options in terms of the migration. You can run, as I mentioned earlier, the side-by-side hybrid approach. So I've got my Teams client, I've got my Skype for Business client. I'm kind of using both of them to do my day-to-day activities. And again, you can do it for an indefinite period. Nothing's been set in stone in terms of dates. We can also do a side-by-side with a notify. So in this case, the IT admin is setting a policy to warn users that, hey, we're going to be moving to Teams in the near future, and perhaps provide a date. And this will let users become aware that they're going to be transitioned over, and then at some point that transition's complete, they can prevent the Skype client from being utilized at that point. Or lastly, you're a small organization, you've dabbled in Skype, you've not really put a huge investment into it, so you can just simply do a cutover to Teams. Especially if you're in countries where PSTN calling is available. We have the calling feature available in Teams now, so that enterprise voice functionality is available to you. If you're not doing anything above and beyond that, then that might be a good approach for you. And once again, there's policies already available for administrators to be able to apply to users or groups of users to provide messaging around what's specifically going to happen for them.
Okay, and then just expanding on that, we sort of broke it down into a table with regards to what is the guidance for customers with cloud intent, or not just cloud intent, but from a communications intent. So if your current deployment is a greenfield, so you don't have any on-premise deployment, you don't have any Skype for Business online, or it's not being utilized, the best thing you can do is pilot Teams. Use it for IM, meetings, voice. Obviously, you want to develop a cloud adoption plan. But if some of the features that that you require are not in Teams just yet. You know, that's not to say that you can't use Skype for Business online and then use Teams sort of at the same time and then have that transition when the features become available in Teams. If you are a server on-prem deployment without enterprise voice, again, this is what Dino mentioned, you can have a Teams side by side. Make sure you pilot, have your user adoption, get some champions, I should say, to help with that user adoption, and then perform your your side-to-side pilot, and then you can do your cutover migration, right? So if you're a server with enterprise voice or other on-premise investments, you can still pilot Teams and still have a side-by-side experience for some users that require that team persistent chat perspective to work on a project together and still utilize the on-prem on-prem version. So consider moving to Skype for Business 2019 when it comes out later next year. So definitely a few different scenarios that will try and help figure out where you are in your transition, or if you're at the beginning, and you can go from there. So just want to say thank you for listening in to the presentation. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to help answer them.
Thanks very much, everybody.